Alright guys, so today I'm bringing you a little bit of a different video format. I'm hoping that this is going to be just a bit more organized and a little easier for you guys to follow. Today I'm going to be talking about the practical strategy that I actually used in my weight loss and kind of developed by accident. I put together the strategies for this video based on my transformation, so personal anecdotes, things I've experienced, a lot of the hurdles and things I go over with my clients, first link in the description if you want to be one of them, and then my research into the science behind this stuff over the past few years. So to preface this entire thing, I suck at dieting. I have a super crazy appetite. I love junk food. I've always had a hard time hitting my protein, and I clearly had a lot of issues with overeating. And then my transformation wasn't a straight shot transformation. It took me 3 years. I started at 240 pounds, and my lowest weight technically was like 156 pounds. Currently, I'm sitting at about 170 pounds. Basically, what I'm getting at is I didn't just start at 240 pounds and then like perfectly execute my diet all the way down to 156 pounds. There were periods where I fell off the diet, fucked things up, maintained my weight, a few bulks in there, dedicated cutting phases, a whole bunch of mess that we're going to talk about in a second. But kind of stretching out my weight loss like this over the span of 3 years is what allowed me to achieve the results I had. The reason why it's a good thing that it wasn't a straight shot transformation was because those periods of maintenance or weight gain allowed me to build the muscle mass I ended up with in the end. And just a little bit of fat loss and fitness mindset for you guys. It's super hard, I know, but you kind of need to stop associating emotions with the scale. Gaining weight is not an intrinsically bad thing. For example, if you're super skinny and you want to gain muscle, gaining weight is an amazing thing. That's your whole goal. So gaining weight isn't going to work against you nearly as much as you think it will, as long as it's controlled, you're adequately training, your protein intake is high, and you're not extremely overweight. And what the fuck does that mean? Well, if you're extremely unhealthily overweight, and gaining weight would be a severe detriment to your health, in that circumstance, objectively gaining weight would be a bad thing. For example, at my starting point, if I went on a bulking phase or tried to gain weight, I think there'd be a lot of heads turning. So there's 3 big weight loss struggles that we're going to kind of work through and try to mitigate as much as possible as I outline the strategies in this video. Energy levels, hunger, and adherence. So 3 big things that can really impact your energy levels while you're losing weight. The amount of sleep you're getting. You eat your single chicken breast for dinner and then you're feeling kind of alright, you lay down in bed, scroll on your phone a little bit and you get a McDonald's ad. Typical like day-to-day average diet, you see a McDonald's ad and you're like, maybe I'll have a hamburger or something tomorrow. But when you're losing weight and you see that McDonald's ad, things look a little bit different. Lay there and stare at the ceiling for a lot longer than you would have if you had a full belly, and the light on the ceiling starts to morph into a fucking Happy Meal. But you tough it out. And then you wake up at 3 a.m. in night sweats, coming out of a dream where you're just eating McFlurry, like, fuck! I want to go back to sleep so fucking bad. Basically, being on a calorie deficit often interferes with your sleep. Carbs, calories, and food timing. The idea is with less fuel, your mental performance is going to be lower too, particularly in relation to reduced carbohydrates. You also need to think about what kind of carbohydrates you're eating, which leads us to hunger and satiety. What kinds of foods are you eating? How much are you eating? And when are you eating it? For the sake of time, I'm going to keep it simple. You want to keep your rapidly digesting carbs to pretty much a minimum, but get them in around your workouts. And then just generally time your food and meals around when you need a high level of mental or physical performance. So if you've got like a job interview or an intense workout coming up. And then for adherence in the short term and long term, you want to come up with an actually good reason that's important to you for losing weight. Ideally, a reason that's on your mind a lot and you think about fairly often, just something that's more important than getting the satisfaction out of the taste of the food you're eating, or hopefully not eating. So as we're going to get into shortly, I fucked up in a lot of ways and quite often during my weight loss. Calories in, calories out is obviously king when it comes to the number on the scale, but you need protein and training to actually look good. I would say for most people, probably the number one benefit that you're looking for is to look better. If you're essentially starving yourself, not getting any protein in, not training, the end result just isn't going to be good. For example, when I started dieting initially, I didn't get any protein, I didn't train at all, and I would eat Domino's pizza all fucking day because I was like, oh, calories in, calories out, it doesn't matter, I'm losing weight. I just didn't really understand nutrition. Like, sure, technically I was losing weight, but if I continued to do that, I would not look how I look now. Binge cycles are a very difficult problem to navigate. I guess there's like a couple approaches most people kind of default to when it comes to binging and dealing with the damages. You can't exactly ignore a binge and just pick up exactly where you left off completely fine, but you also can't let it consume you and overcompensate in an unhealthy way like starving yourself. The middle ground I've kind of come up with is when I do have some kind of binge eating episode or I just go over my calories, especially if it becomes habitual, I don't ignore it. I keep it in mind and I resume the next day the same amount of calories I plan to eat, whatever it is that I assign myself for the diet I'm doing. I will maybe do like 100 to 200 calories extra of cardio, not something ridiculous or unhealthy like spending all day walking or going on the treadmill, just like adding an extra light walk walk to help you feel a little bit better about it mentally, and then making some kind of adjustment to your routine. What do I mean by this? Well, if you don't make some kind of change, if you let it go on long enough, oftentimes you'll notice that binge eating can be fairly predictable. So something I used to do a lot was I would start watching anime right before bed, and then I would end up staying up late, and then that was what led me to binge eating. So weirdly enough, the solution to binge eating, or the change or modification I'm making to my routine to solve it, is actually just removing the anime before bed. Often there will be some kind of activity or habit that correlates with overeating, so try to identify what that is. If that doesn't exist for you, you need to really think about what modification or big change you can make to set up some kind of variation in your routine and kind of snap you out of it. Another big mistake I would make was skipping leg day and just not training at all. You obviously need a balanced training routine. You need to hit all the muscles. And then this isn't actually something I fucked up. This is just an interesting thing to note. Your self-image while you're losing weight will often be very delayed. Often this will lead to pretty severe body dysmorphia. You could have lost 30 pounds and still feel the same way you did like 3 months ago. What I've found is your self-image and how you view yourself is delayed by about 2 to 3 months. So while I was actively losing weight, there were times when I genuinely felt like 10 to 20 pounds heavier than I actually was. I think the biggest help here is just time, adapting to your new body and adapting to your new lifestyle. So in my weight loss, I took a two-phased approach. A dieting phase and a consolidation phase. Almost like if you're familiar with the stock market, how when a stock's on an uptrend and it's going in a positive direction, oftentimes there will be dips or like some kind of consolidation period where it settles into its new value, which I guess from like a philosophical perspective kind of ties into the idea of self-image I just brought up earlier. So there's a few reasons why I think dieting like this is pretty effective. First of all is this light at the end of the tunnel effect. It gives you something to look forward to and think about during your dieting process, but in a controlled way, which I'll go more into later. 2, you'll literally look better. Having like a consolidation phase or maintenance phase will allow you to put on more muscle than you otherwise could have. And then again, kind of tying back into that first point, adherence. This isn't just about losing the weight, it's about losing the weight and keeping it off over a very long span of time. And then I kind of developed this strategy and fell into it accidentally. Basically, I would get so sick and tired of dieting after like 8 to 12 weeks that I just physically couldn't diet anymore. And still to this day, I really can't stick to a diet longer than like 12 weeks. But I wanted it bad enough and I could persevere to the point where I could at least maintain my weight for a little while. And then I was kind of refreshed and I could jump back on the diet after a little while of maintaining. And again, this kind of takes dieting from being like a super extreme thing where it's like you go from dieting super hard, like eating dust, to just eating whatever the fuck you want. It's not something you only have to do once, it's something you have to do and then maintain and maybe even do again a few times. This system just kind of turns that into something you can actually follow. So for starters, we got the actual dieting phase. Now this is a fairly extreme diet. It's basically like the monk mode of dieting. In order to actually achieve this and stick to it, your entire life might end up having to revolve around the diet. It sucks, it's tough, but it will get you rapid results and it will be extremely motivating. Motivating enough to stick to basically hell for 8 to 12 weeks. Essentially just eating like the bare minimum, lowest amount of calories you can tolerate for as long as you can tolerate it. The lowest I prefer to go down to is about 1,800 calories. I personally cannot diet any lower than that. Eat high protein, do as much cardio as you can handle, and train hard as fuck. As far as protein intake goes, I eat at about 1 gram per pound of body weight just to be safe, but I'm also fairly lean at this point. For most of you watching this, if you're fairly overweight, protein's entire purpose is to preserve your lean mass. So find out what your body fat percentage is, maybe with an online calculator, or ask your friends, or just use like the eyeball test. Look at a chart and just kind of figure out around what you think your body fat percentage is, and then adjust your weight to your lean mass by subtracting the amount of body fat you have from your total weight. So for example, if you're like 200 pounds and you subtract the fat mass and you end up being like 150 pounds, in that case you'd be 25% body fat, you would want to eat at about 150 grams of protein while you're following your diet. As far as cardio goes, do as much as you like and do as much as you're able to get in. You don't want to do so much that it's fucking with your workouts and you're feeling sore from it, and for that reason you generally want to keep it pretty low intensity. Also, if you do too much, it's probably going to impact your energy levels, so keep that in mind too. A good marker to be at is about 10k to 15k steps a day, which considering the calories is extremely aggressive here. So I want to emphasize again, like cardio isn't really necessary, but just do as much as you want to do as much as you're comfortable with. Basically just do as much as you're willing to do. So next we have the consolidation phase, or as I've kind of called it here, the accidental bulk. So you've successfully endured hell for 8 weeks and now you take some time off from the diet. But this isn't actually time off from the diet. You're still dieting here. And that's kind of like the weird like mindset around this whole thing. Like the diet never actually ends. In order for you to lose weight and actually keep it off and look how you want to look for the rest of your life, you can't go back into your old eating habits. Instead, that's where I kind of came up with this idea, the consolidation phase. Basically, what we're doing here is like settling into our new weight. Bump your calories up and eat at about maintenance or a very slight surplus of about a half a pound of body weight per week. Of course, we're going to continue our training here, and this is going to allow us to put on some muscle mass and gain some strength. If you lost any muscle while in a deficit, you're going to gain it pretty much all back during this phase and maybe a little more. Or if you gained or maintained your muscle mass during your deficit, you're going to be able to gain even more muscle a lot quicker. The visual changes are obviously not going to be as noticeable as when you were actively losing weight, but the changes you'll have in body composition, especially over the long run, are going to be very important and very noticeable at the end of everything. So this is kind of weird because you've probably been looking forward to this the entire time you've been dieting, but sadly, at the beginning of this, it's honestly probably going to be even harder than dieting was. Your hunger levels are going to be very high from being in a calorie restricted state for so long, and it's going to be like, oh boy, I get to eat so much food now. But there's still a pretty big limit on how much food you can actually eat. The floodgates are not open here. You can't just eat whatever you want and expect to continue making progress. You need to adjust to your new maintenance intake and accept that this is the amount of food you need now to maintain your weight and learn to actually control and improve your eating habits. Fat people eat giant packs of Twinkies. People in amazing shape do not. The best thing to do here is, have like a little bit of fun. Enjoy some of the foods that you just could not have while you're on the diet, but also pretty much just eat the same foods that you're eating while you're dieting, but in higher portions. Just eat more of that. It's kind of like bulking, but in tutorial mode, like bulking for fat people. A lot of people will kind of recommend phases like these to fix your relationship with food, as if food is like some kind of toxic relationship. Viewing food like this honestly does not help at all. All food is fuel for performance, whether it's mental or physical. If you just take a second to think about it from like a molecular view, evolution, whatever the fuck, however you want to think about it, all food is fuel for your body. It would be naive to say that food doesn't have a lot of social events around it, and society hasn't built a lot of pastimes and big events around food, and there's tons of tasty stuff to eat, and engaging in those events is totally fine. In fact, eating like garbage every once in a while is also totally fine, but it's this idea of tracking the garbage and eating in moderation, because it's just fuel, that'll help you stay on track in the long run and not just for 8 weeks. You got fat because your previous self literally stole all of your calories from you now, like a form of debt. And then optionally, if you know that you will not go overboard, you can take a break from tracking calories here, as long as you're maintaining your weight or in a very small surplus. And then also, when you increase your calories, expect your weight to acutely go up by a few pounds just from increased water retention. You should also be tracking your weight regularly and weighing in the entire time, because if you fall off of that habit of tracking your weight regularly, it can lead to you feeling a lot more comfortable with binging and eating like garbage. In periods where I don't track my calories at all, I do find that I tend to go a lot more overboard and a lot higher on my calories than I would otherwise like to. So getting into the specifics of the timing between these two phases, like how long should I diet for and how long should I maintain for? Basically, just do the diet phase for as long as you can, and then when you're really starting to feel hungry, you find that you're frequently kind of going over your calories and having like almost uncontrollable levels of hunger, that's a big sign that you should probably bump your calories up and go into that maintenance phase. Usually this will start to happen at about the 8 to 12 week mark. So I suggest here that you should go into the consolidation phase for about 8 weeks, but you oftentimes can get away with a lot less than that. Depending on your goals, depending on how overweight you actually are and how much weight you ended up losing, you might not even need these at all. This video is designed more for people that are starting out like pretty damn overweight. My periods of maintenance usually last about 4 to 8 weeks. Let's say you're like me and you started out at 240 pounds, and then you follow the protocol I just mentioned, and over a 12-week period you get down to like 210 pounds. At 210 pounds, you're probably still going to be pretty overweight, and I'm assuming your goals are to get all the weight off and look as good as you possibly can here. With that in mind, you probably are not going to need or want to maintain your weight for 8 whole weeks. Something more like 4 to 6 weeks is going to be a lot more realistic for you. The more weight you have to lose, the easier it is to diet. When you want to get truly lean and diet down to an extremely lean level, the hungrier you're going to be and the more resistance your body is going to put against you. So having longer periods like this is probably going to be a lot more beneficial. And then through the years, I've had a lot of people, usually people that have never struggled with weight in their life, tell me, just bulk, bro. My counter argument to that, obese people probably shouldn't bulk. The common mindset around bulking is like basically just eat whatever you want, eat absolutely everything, and gain as much size as possible. For someone like me, that can put on weight pretty fucking easily without trying, that is a huge trap. It will lead to you getting fat as fuck. Technically, you'll gain as much muscle as you possibly can, but you'll also gain as much fat as you possibly can. The self-image trend line's going down instead of up. That's a big problem. Just keep this in mind later down the line when you get the weight off and you decide to go on a mass gaining or bulking phase. The best way to do it is going to be very slow and very controlled. If you take skinny people bulking advice, your weight is going to go like this. We don't want that because there's going to be way too much excess fat gain. For fat people or ex-fat people like me, bulking is honestly harder than dieting because you need to get it in your head that, again, like I mentioned earlier, the floodgates aren't just open and you can't just eat whatever you want. There's still order and control to your diet. Staying motivated. If you guys have seen my shorts or TikToks, progress videos, progress pictures are the key to staying motivated. When you go through a successful diet phase and you take regular, at least weekly progress pictures and then you look back towards the start of the diet, there's going to be a pretty noticeable difference. It's going to keep you motivated throughout your maintenance phase, and it's also going to motivate you to push hard on your next dieting phase. It also gives you something else to look at that's not just the scale weight. The number on the scale can be very misleading. Your weight can fluctuate a lot around what it truly is. For example, just eating a slightly bigger meal before bed and then weighing yourself in the morning can lead to the number on the scale unexpectedly going up the next morning. When you have progress pictures and something to go off of that's not just a number, you can clearly see that you're continuing to make progress despite the lies that the scale tells you. You need to keep your reason for losing weight in mind. Oftentimes when you're about to grab some bullshit, that reason, whatever it is for you for losing weight, is gonna be what stops you from consuming it. For me, it was wanting to get girls. I was clearly not in a position where many girls wanted to talk to me. This has happened a few times. Whenever people would approach me in the gym and ask me how I lost so much weight, how I stayed motivated, why I was going to the gym, I would always tell them I was completely honest. All I cared about was wanting to get girls. 90% of the time they would shit on me and be like, that's so shallow, I can't believe that, on their high horse and shit, like they didn't feel the exact same way. But over time, your reason for putting value on your health and fitness will evolve. For me, I've just truly fallen in love with the process of bodybuilding. Just looking in the mirror and being like, oh shit, dope new vein there. The sense of community, the progression, everything, it just looks fucking cool to be shredded too. All of it, it's just fun to me. I like doing it. I've been doing this stuff for like 3.5 years. And for the first 2 years, it was super shallow reasons for doing it. But finally, in the past year or so, I finally developed like a better, like healthier reason for doing what I do. If this video is valuable to you, it helped you in some way, or is entertaining, please subscribe. Check out my first link in the description if you're interested in getting coached by me. And then I'm also going to release my total transformation program on July 14th. And if you want to get a 20% off discount, click on the second link in the description and you can enter your email and I'll send you a discount code on the week that I drop my program. Basically, just click on all the links in the description. With that said, I'll see you in the next video.